beautiful soul, and welcome back to another episode of Permission to Follow Your Inner GPS, your inner guided purpose soul path. We have another amazing, beautiful soul with us today, Katrina McGhee. I am your host, Angel Lady Terry Marie. I am a highly sensitive, intuitive empath channel. And I help my clients to raise their vibe so they can connect with their own guides and their angels in the ways that they want for financial success, relationship success, and business success. So we are with today this beautiful lady who has been on Forbes. She's been featured in Forbes. She helps her clients who dislike their conventional job and career to find the courage and clarity to pursue unconventional path, their path to their success and far more happiness and fulfillment. Please, beautiful lady, tell us more about you and your journey.
Okay, thank you for having me on your show, Terry Marie. I'm excited to be here with you today.
Thank you. We're delighted to have you here. We've been chitter-chattering a little bit before, y'all, so which is always fun.
Yeah.
Please tell us about yourself and a little bit about your journey.
Yeah. Okay, so I am myself a life coach. I have an MBA. I made a drastic escape from corporate America, actually twice. But my journey has been a long, winding, twisty path. It's been full of adventure, definitely hard moments, but I'm a big believer in you can go any which way you want to go. And I think a lot of times people in today's world are trying to follow a very straight and narrow path. You only go forward. I'm a big believer in side to side, even backwards sometimes, leads to sort of the best ultimate place. So my journey is that I started out in corporate America. I graduated with a math degree and I became an actuary. Which when I say that, a lot of people are like, you don't seem like an actuary. Or they're just like, I have no idea what an actuary is. Really fair. But if you know what accounting is, it's kind of like as serious as accounting, but it's all about stats and probabilities of people dying or getting sick. And it's very mathy, very sort of, it can be very introverted. So I did that for 8 years and I did not love it. It didn't fit me, but it paid really well. And that was hard to leave. But I found the courage to leave. I went to get my MBA because I thought business school was a really safe alternative. It made a lot of sense. It's kind of like I'm being a rebel, but I'm being like a really smart, like planful rebel. So it felt better. And I got my degree, which was amazing. But when I came out of business school, I completely changed careers. I went into market research. I got a job out in Minnesota, started working for General Mills. It was supposed to be this dream job. Like there's so many people that would have loved to have this job. And I did too for like several months. And then I remember like 8 months in realizing, oh my gosh, I actually dislike this even more because it was so corporate and corporate wasn't me. And that was a really hard realization to stomach and to own. But I got myself a life coach and I made some big changes. And I had this huge epiphany sitting on her couch that instead of finding a new career to find my purpose or my passion, I just wanted to take a break. And when I realized that, I was super scared, I felt super crazy. I was like, who does this? Who does this? But I mean, it was what I really wanted and I knew to be true for myself. Like once it sort of that voice whispered to me, you just need a break. It was so truthful. I just had to honor it. And so I saved up my money. I had like $1,500 in my bank account. I saved for 18 months. I managed to save $40,000, quit my job, and traveled around the world for about 20 months. And so that was sort of my big corporate breakout number one. But when I came back, I still had $42,000 in MBA loans to pay off. And that's a lot of money. And I'm a stressed out person when it comes to carrying debt. And so I had to ask myself, what is my highest priority now? And my highest priority was paying off that debt as fast as humanly possible. So that's what I did. So I went back into corporate, tried to find a balance of something I enjoyed more, but that also was going to pay, pretty steady, good corporate salary. And 22 months later, I had paid off all $42,000 in loans. And I started building a path towards becoming a coach myself and really helping people who want to follow their own unconventional path to success through my story. So I actually left as of February of 2018. I left my corporate job, yeah, and I left it for good. So now I'm full-time coaching. I'm actually on this indefinite road trip. I'm on a mission to find my new home, and I want to do it from a really sort of holistic place where I go somewhere that feels very aligned and feels like I need to be here. And so I'm kind of taking my time, checking different places out, going to visit friends, attending and networking at events, and like doing things that fill me up inside, and just kind of waiting for the next chapter to unfold.
There's something very important and insightful here, beautiful souls. This beautiful lady went to corporate, left, went back after she got another degree, left, and went back one more time. But this time was with a focus in mind. So your mindset was all one word at a time, also different because you had an end goal rather than, well, corporate's the only way. Now, don't send us any emails or lovely notes about being in, this is not a poo-poo on corporate. This is not right for her and apparently not right for me either, not that I was ever in it. I don't think they would have accepted me. I'm just a little too on the other side of things. But the point is, if you're not happy where you are, see it as a bridge to help you get to where you want to be. And that's what Katrina did. She went back in temporarily. And now you are like free. So tell us some of the, at least one obstacle or a challenge in really doing this shift.
Yeah, so I mean, there are plenty to choose from. But one of the biggest for me is it's what I had known, right? And in my family dynamic, I was the really responsible kid, right? I was the very predictable kid. I was the oldest between my two parents. So, I grew up in the house being the one that always made like the rational, smart decision. And that was sort of like part of my identity. And so I think for me, one of the biggest shifts that had to happen was that I had to accept that this really narrow definition of responsible and correct and right, like it wasn't actually the definition of right. Like the definition of right is what lights me up, what makes my life worth living. But I had to really shed that old sort of idea and think that was all that I was. And also, growing up in a small town in West Virginia, like my parents didn't make a lot of money and there was a lot attached to, progress and being responsible and making good money. And so I really had to detach myself from feeling like those things defined who I was.
That's so important. And, the shift from okay. You can tell I'm getting downloads all in the same moment. It's like shifting. So you mentioned something very important, shifting out of what role was sort of created for you. And it's when we're very young, and a lot of these things we inherit. Now, this is not judgment, it's not blame, it's just an is. So where she grew up and the cultural norms, right? And once you get a good job, you're supposed to stick with it. I mean, you don't let it go, right?
Absolutely, yes.
So tell us some more about how you helped yourself get out of that, because that's what our viewers are going to be tuning in or, watching for, is to how did Katrina do it? Because within your story is at least one or two tidbits that could really be someone else's gold mine to okay, Katrina did this. Now, how did she do it? So how can I do it too?
Yeah, that's awesome. I think two things come to mind, really critical, important life-changing moments. But one is looking at evidence. So, if we've been on this earth for a few decades, there might be evidence of this one moment we did something that was unexpected, or we did something that went against what conventional wisdom would tell us that we're supposed to do. And we still achieved some success in our life as far as how we felt, when we showed up, sort of the outcome. And so for me, that experience was when I was 21 years old and I was graduating from Smith College with a degree in math. And I received this job offer to work at Cigna. And it was a great company. They were going to pay me $38,000, which back then at that age was a lot of money. It was more than like, I think my mom was making at the time. Like it was so much, right? But I desperately wanted to live in Atlanta. I didn't know why, but I'd done my whole undergrad in New England and I just really wanted to move down south. And I felt that was so true for me. And it was really scary to turn down this job in the face of having no other options. And I remember agonizing over it for like a month. And I got them to extend the decision like a couple more weeks. My mom would call me like every day. Did you make a decision yet? You're going to tell them yes, right? And I'm like, oh, Mom, stop harassing me. I'm so nervous, you know? But in the end, I told them no. And I told them no in spite of having no other offers. And 6 weeks later, I was contacted by a recruiter. I ended up interviewing for a job and accepting a position that was similar, but it was in Atlanta. It was paying $45,000. It was going to give me $5,000 signing bonus. It was going to pay for relocation, and they were going to let me take the summer off. Right. So by all measures, I feel like following my inner wisdom on that one planted a seed to say, hey, listen, girl, when you really want something, like I'm here to conspire with you. Like I'm here to help you get what you need and what you want. And so I think looking for evidence of the time, even if your example is smaller than that, where you did it, where you followed it, and like what was the outcome? And was it this terrible, like you were homeless on the street, like begging for food, which I think is the emotional place that a lot of us go to think about doing something outside of, you know, like the norm or breaking out of the box in a way. So I think looking for proof when you did it and you survived and probably even had some success can be really powerful. And the second thing is I needed a coach. Like when I really shifted my mindset around even knowing, I was so unaware that I was playing this role as the responsible one, right? My parents didn't say this to me. It was just sort of something that was ingrained and I carried it with me. I needed an outside person to help reflect back at me what I was thinking and how I was showing up. And I needed that support to replace those thoughts and sort of that approach to life with something better, something more empowering, something just more hopeful. And so being able to have somebody help guide me through something I was completely unaware of really changed how I saw myself and how I saw my opportunities in the world.
Being able to step outside yourself, we can do that for ourselves to a certain extent. However, if all we have is a specific reference point to here, and we want to get to there, you know, ultimately up here, but right here for now, okay, just for the moment, you have to have some outside guidance. You have to, because its whole job is to keep you in your place. Yeah. You know, in that role of responsibility. And what do you mean you didn't accept the job? What do you mean you want to go to Atlanta? Are you crazy? And who knows what else? And when our parents and our grandparents were coming along, a lot of them were in the Depression, and you got a good job and you held on, no matter if you hated it or anything. So being able to break away, getting a degree, say, okay, this is a shift. And then you want to say, you know, it's not exactly what I thought it was going to be. I need to do something different. Can you give, I'm trying to think how to word this. Give us a specific example, if you're willing, to, yes, you got a life coach, but what did you work through? Just one thing that you actually worked through, and how did you do that to help you get to where it's like, okay, I'm going to go travel. And then when you go back, say, okay, I'm going to go back into corporate for this amount of time to do this, and then I'm done.
Yeah. So one thing that I really tangibly got from our time together was I had started a gratitude journaling practice, which was really helpful to change my mind frame from one of lack to abundance, right? So I think part of the money fears that were interwoven with being responsible are that Like money is the definition of success. Money is the only way I can have opportunities, and I need to amass as much of it as possible to take care of myself and my family. And so having a gratitude journal practice is really simple, but I think that plus other activities and exercises in my life at the time with a coach, I started realizing like I've always had enough, right? And I started realizing that there's plenty out there, and that it doesn't all have to be like hard dollars and cash. Like I'm great at manifesting free things. It's really strange. I had never, really realized that about myself, but in many ways, shapes, and forms, I had more. I had more in my life than I realized. And so working on expressing gratitude and seeing the world differently and believing that there was sort of this infinite abundance was super helpful for me in letting go of my fear around money, letting go of this fear that if I didn't have a corporate salary, or if I left the corporate job even for a minute, that I might be destitute someday and like broke, penniless, living on the street. I had actually read Eat, Pray, Love in 2009. So I was seeing the coach around 2012, and it planted a seed in me of this woman who had this fantastic journey that was really about herself, but like juxtaposed against the context of traveling around the world. And I had never been abroad until I was 30 years old, and it was sort of this wanderlust that had been percolating inside of me for like 30 years. And it planted a seed. But at the time, without that sort of like guidance and perspective, I was like, that's crazy. No one does that. Only a writer like leaves their job to travel around the world. Who does that, right? But it had planted this seed way back in my brain. And so the moment that I sort of peeled away enough layers to believe that I was always going to be okay, to believe that there are many ways to sort of make a living and that there is sort of this abundance underneath of it all, that seed popped forward and was like, you want your own trip around the world, girl. Like you've been wanting it for 3 years, and now I can say it to you. And so for me, I think that one exercise, with other exercises layered in, like really started to allow me to peel away these layers and let my truth kind of come out.
That's so important. I'm glad you said layers, because people in general they think it's one thing. That's the starting point. Fortunately or unfortunately, it's never just that and that's it. There are layers, because, it's kind of like a crystal that has layers of energy. And I don't know why that came into my head. Actually, the word they said was sediment, like in a mountain. Well, imagine a tree. I like that better. Because you have the rings in a tree, and the one in the center is very small, and you have them growing out every year. Well, that's the similar type of thing that we all do to ourselves, because we're borrowing. We're then internalizing and saying, okay, that's got to be the way it is because that's what I see. That's what I'm taught. Well, that's not the way it has to be. Not at all. And gratitude, people don't really, a lot more do, but still so many think all I have to do is say it in my head, and it's not enough.
Oh my gosh, it is not enough in your head. It is so different, because I feel like there's something to putting it down. There's such an intention around that. And it's like physical proof. Like when you write it out, you look at this list of things that you have to be grateful for. And it's much different than this sort of nebulous, oh, I thought of 3 things. Like I believed similarly. I was like, on nights I'd feel tired, I'd be like, yeah, I'll just think about it. But it didn't resonate the same way. It didn't settle into my bones the same way it did when I actually took the time and made the intention to write it out.
And that's because we are physical beings. So you write, you feel, you think, and you're focused everything in the moment rather than just in your head. So now that you're totally on your own, even though you were preparing for this, was there some kind of an exit strategy that you needed mentally and emotionally for this, Katrina?
Yeah, and by this, are we talking my most current exit or the?
Yes, the one in February.
Yes, for sure. So I actually told my company that I wanted to go part-time a little over a year ago. So they knew like kind of in advance. They didn't know I was leaving. I didn't know that I was leaving, but I kind of was mentally building up this plan of like, okay, I'm going to try it part-time, and then if that works, we'll see. And so I was part-time for the entire summer. And then it became clear to me, like, I really love this, but If I want to show up the way I'm really supposed to show up, I can't do it one day a week. Like I have to really make space for it, and I have to clear it out and like basically stand there and tell the universe like I made the space for it. Like I'm ready for it to come in. Like I'm not standing here in fear. I'm ready to play big. And so I gave them 4 months notice that I was leaving. And so in that time I'd been saving money. I'd finished my certification a little over a year ago. So I had started trying to build up clients and just sort of sharing what I do, taking classes on how to build a business, especially online, because that was something that was completely foreign to me as I'd only ever been an employee my whole life. So I definitely along the way was trying to interact with other people, take courses, and just start to think about my finances again, and getting stuff ready so that I could leave. And I knew my lease was up at the end of March. So I had pretty much known when I decided I was going to leave, I knew that that was going to be around the time I left, so that it was kind of a clean break and I could just move out of Minnesota and kind of figure out what was going to come next.
It's very different being in corporate in any kind of supervisory or whatever position and then being totally on your own. And women we feel the need to have permission. So what permissions did you give yourself?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I had to give myself permission to figure it out. I'm a big believer in not compressing things. Like I get very stressed out if I compress things. So as an example, when I took this 20 months to travel around the world and go have a career break, I intentionally planned for like 4 months to be spent back in the US with nothing to do, just slowly figuring out what was going to come next. Like I'm a big believer in giving myself the space, because I find that decisions that I make when I'm really stressed out and there's this burning sense of urgency are not always in my best interest. I'm much more likely to make them based on like fear or overwhelm. And so that's just something I've sort of adopted in my life. So for me, it was like spacing everything out was really helpful, sort of giving myself permission to make this transition thoughtfully, and to, when I transition, say my business doesn't have to replace my corporate income by week 4, right? Like I basically am giving myself a year to let that happen, and being very grateful for all that I'm experiencing, but also not being afraid to experiment or just be kind of like on the cliff, right? Like I jumped off the cliff and now I'm free falling a little. And it's like, I'm going to give myself some time to just embrace the free fall and not completely lose my mind. And so I think for me, like giving myself permission to give my business time and to give me time to adjust to the big change has been helpful and necessary.
Awesome. We tend to want immediate results, and sometimes we get them and sometimes we don't. And you also mentioned something else about manifesting many things as free. And what people don't realize when we manifest and say, well, somebody bought me lunch. Yes. Well, it's not money in my bank account. Well, it didn't take money out of your bank account. Oh, I hadn't thought that.
It's so true.
Everything that you receive is money in a different form, and money is energy. And the two most important things in a human's life, generally speaking, are money and love. Two huge energies, and money is energy. It just happens to play a huge role, because without it, it makes things difficult in this realm. It just does.
So true.
What is a favorite way of yours to work with your clients, Katrina?
Oh, I love doing power sessions. So I have real clients that sign up and we work together for at least 3 months and really tackle sort of forward momentum. But one of my most favorite things is I love plans. Like I used to live in Excel. I have sort of that calculating mind. I've built plans to leave my job to save a lot of money. So I really love working virtually, getting a power session where someone's comfortable in their zone, in their home, like feeling really safe, and just connecting in a way where it's like, let's spend these 90 minutes like breaking stuff up, like shaking it up, and like helping you get your next big steps for what you want to create. I really just love that. I love inspiring people, and I find that those 90-minute sessions, that's a real sort of like added value is to have somebody feel like, oh my gosh, these things I want are actually possible and they're not crazy.
Excellent. What are some of the results, or just, think of one of your more favorite clients and what is some of the results that he or she has achieved working with you?
Yeah, so one that comes to mind because it's very recent. I actually had a client that had a breakthrough just on the free discovery call. Like we weren't even coaching. And I just, at the end of it, I just asked her this question and sort of made this statement that made her question everything. And she wanted to leave her more corporate job as an architect. But she thought it was like years away, like 2 to 4 years. She's younger, in her mid-20s, and she was like, oh, it's like, a couple years away, but I just feel this thing where I want to start to make a plan and maybe someday get there. And I asked her this question that really made her realize that she believed she could not have as big of an impact on the world if she was to go it alone. And when she challenged that, she was like, why am I staying here if I'm ready to go make an impact? And so just on that discovery call, she had made a decision to go from, I'm going to leave my job in 2 to 4 years, to I'm going to leave my job in a few months. And then she ended up signing up, and we've been working together for just 2 or 3 months. And she gave notice, she left her job, and she started her own company. And she is in the midst of a big contract, like landing a really big contract. I'm so proud of her, doing what she had dreamed that she would be doing. Like, she's all about sustainability and sustainable architecture, and she has this opportunity to go out there and make a difference. And I'm so proud of her relentless pursuit of what she knows to be true for herself. I think a lot of us, myself included, it's easy to get hung up on the self-doubt, right? And you have to, it's like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward. And she's like 12 steps forward and then maybe like 1 step back. And I've been so heartened by her tenacity to show up for herself and to put herself out there to make the ask and to do the big things, even though she's young and she could make up a million excuses why it's not her time.
And had she decided to go it alone, she would still be working for someone else for 2 to 4 years, probably stretch that into 6.
Yes.
And had gotten very discouraged doing some work she loved, but not what fed her, not what feeds her from the inside out.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else you'd like to share with our viewers before we complete today, beautiful?
One piece of advice I would love to leave everybody with is that all of these changes we're talking about, like my change, her change, sound so dramatic and so big and so, like over the top. And yes, in some way they are. That's kind of how I like to show up. But I'm a huge believer in, like, your only responsibility is to figure out your next right step. It doesn't have to be a gigantic leap off of the cliff. You just need to put energy and intention into getting clear on what's right for you next, not predicting 25 years from now. Like, who are you today? What is it that really you want? And like getting clear on that and taking a step to make that happen. So it doesn't always have to be a gigantic leap off of the cliff if you don't want it to be.
Well said. So please tell our viewers, Katrina, how they can find you.
Yeah, so I have a website online where you can hear more about my story. You can check out how we could work together, but it's kmcgheecoaching.com. And you can also find me on Instagram. I am currently running a 30-day personal challenge to find gratitude and presence in each and every day. Some days are amazing, some days are a struggle, but I'm documenting that journey on my Instagram, so you can find me there as well.
So give your website address just one more time, a little more slowly, please. I didn't catch it.
Yeah, no problem. It's K McGhee, so that's MCGHEE, coaching.com. And my Instagram is K McGhee Coaching as well.
Nice, very nice. Thank you so much for your time and sharing. This lady went not once, not twice, but 3 times into corporate, and she's still alive. And very much more alive, okay? You can do it too, beautiful soul. Thank you so much for being with us. And do stop by angeldreamteam.com and get your free, easy-to-follow guide, Angels, Success, and Prosperity. Become a mover and shaker of your reality. And until next time, give yourself permission to try at least one new thing. Thank you for joining us. Bye-bye for now.